Welcome to the Wire to Wire podcast. As always, it's me, your host Yusuf. Now, without further ado, let's just get right to it. The Oklahoma City Thunder and the San Antonio Spurs already faced each other 3 times this season. That's right, 3 times. And all 3 times, the San Antonio Spurs were victorious over them. So now we have to start looking at it and saying, are the San Antonio Spurs the better team than the Oklahoma City Thunder? Now, if they are, which all signs point to since they won all 3 times, now the first game you could look at it and say, okay, maybe it was somewhat questionable, but the next 2 games following that, they have beat them decisively. Now, if you're the Oklahoma City Thunder, what do? Do you keep the team that you have intact and hope that you go throughout the regular season dominating and that when you get to the playoffs, you don't have to match up against the Spurs? Or do you make a trade just to retool the team a little bit to allow yourself to finish the season strong and eventually try to contend and win another championship? Now, this is not an easy decision to make because on one hand, the team did start off relatively well and you can say, well, they didn't face the greatest of competition. But on the other hand, losing 3 games to the same team, I mean, that's almost half of a whole playoff series right there. If this was a best of 7, the San Antonio Spurs already won 3. Now, the only thing that the Oklahoma City Thunder might have is they might have experience on their side. But I just think that the San Antonio Spurs are a bad matchup for this team, and they need to figure something out. Now, here's one thing to think about, is the trade deadline is not until February. They have one final game against the Spurs in January. So if they stick it out with the team that they currently have in place and they face the San Antonio Spurs in January and they end up losing all 4 games, then they still have quite some time up until the trade deadline to try and make a move to see where those gaps are. Or they could say, hey, you know what? It's just a regular season. We like our chances. Roll the dice with the team that you have in place now. Get to the playoffs. And maybe you see the Spurs in the playoffs. Maybe you don't. It all just depends on how things shake up, especially towards the end of the season, the play-in, and then you get to the playoffs. So that's really the only 2 options that they have on the table. And if there's anything that I know is that Sam Presti is an incredible GM. So he is already doing the calculations and doing the math and trying to figure out how they can go about doing it. Because it's one thing to lose to the Spurs, that is a bad matchup. But I also think that that loss that they took to the Minnesota Timberwolves, I think also exposed or at least magnified some of the problems that exist with this Oklahoma City Thunder team. Now, when they're rolling, they're rolling. However, teams that usually play aggressive with them on defense, and if referees are a little bit more conservative with their whistle than they usually are, that can sometimes pose a problem for the Oklahoma City Thunder. So I think with the San Antonio Spurs, aside from the fact that they're a very bad matchup, I think that their style of play really gives fits and problems to the Oklahoma City Thunder. And if you look at the way Minnesota Timberwolves played, they hit some clutch shots towards the end of the game, but also they were playing physical all throughout the game, which posed a problem for the OKC Thunder. So as great as the team started off, I think all that all-time great stuff, I think kind of needs to take a back burner. And I think even the Oklahoma City Thunder shouldn't busy themselves or worry about trying to have an all-time great record. Hypothetically, if they were even trying to go for the Warriors 73-9 record, they're already at 5 losses. That would mean they can only afford to lose 3 games from now up until mid-April. Now, obviously, it's good to strive for goals, but why would you want to strive for something like that? That should not be the priority. The priority should be finding your identity, building championship habits, and playing good basketball from start to finish, and playing consistent basketball from start to finish, and trying to get better and more cohesive as a unit. Now, a lot of people can say, well, hey, look, it's just a regular season. Once the playoffs start, it's a completely different game. Now, I can see why some people come to that conclusion. However, I'm not of the belief that you can do whatever you want all throughout the regular season. And then once the playoffs start, you could just flip a switch and just like that, you suddenly become a dominant team. I think the regular season is about building habits, building a system, and using it to put everything together so that by the time you get to the playoffs, you have the routine, you know what you're doing, you have a system in place, you know your defensive schemes, and then you go out there and you compete, you adjust, and you adapt as the series goes on while maintaining your core identity that you built throughout the regular season. Well, this idea that even though they beat us during the regular season series, now once we get to the playoffs, we can figure it out. But the San Antonio Spurs will have the confidence that because they beat you at least 3 times this season, we'll see what happens in January. But let's just say they beat them all 4 times. Now this team has a confidence that we know what we're doing. We know how to beat you. The Oklahoma City Thunder bring the experience, but the other team will have the confidence and the history of beating you. So in my opinion, that would kind of cancel each other out. For the Oklahoma City Thunder to think that, hey, we couldn't get them in the regular season, but now in the playoffs we will, I don't think it works that way. So what I believe the Oklahoma City Thunder should do is stay put with what you have right now. The whole idea of trying to have a historically great season, forget about it. Just have the coach implement strategies, whether that's lineups, whether that's offensive systems or defensive schemes, on how you can adapt and navigate the season. Then in January, that will be a good litmus test. If you lose to the San Antonio Spurs again, then you try to make a move from that point on up until the trade deadline to fill in the gaps. However, if they manage to beat the San Antonio Spurs and they continue to have quite an impressive run, or they're looking strong and they're looking dominant and they're able to hold their own, then you got to gamble and take the risk and bet on yourself. And whatever happens in the playoffs, happens in the playoffs. But I think that game in January against the Spurs, I think will be a huge litmus test for the Oklahoma City Thunder on how they go about navigating the rest of the season, especially by the trade deadline, and from that point on, leading to the playoffs. But I think those 3 games against the San Antonio Spurs were a huge wake-up call for them, because the San Antonio Spurs didn't just beat them. They put the rest of the league on notice that they are a young, tough, competitive team that has arrived, especially Wembanyama. But also, they kind of exposed somewhat of a blueprint on if you're going to beat the Oklahoma City Thunder, here's how you do it. And I think we saw the Minnesota Timberwolves in that game kind of take advantage of it and play physical. And the Oklahoma City Thunder looked uncomfortable. And of course, they only lost 5 games, so there's no reason to hit the panic button. And that's why I'm suggesting you keep things the way that they are for now. Build better habits. Go back to doing what works. And also try to find new ways, whether that's on the offensive end or the defensive end. Try to find ways to retool the system a little bit. Work with what you have. But that game in January will be pivotal. And I think that game should be the litmus test for how the team proceeds the remainder of the season leading up to the playoffs. But that's all I got for you guys today. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. You guys can also follow me on social media, Instagram, TikTok. I'm active on there. You guys can also check out my books. All of the links will be in the description. Until next time.